Sorry, guys. For some reason, there was like an admit people thing. So strange. Anyway, Aryeh, Leora, hey, Natalia. Hi, our speaker's here. So exciting. Okay, Panina's coming. We have already more than 3 people, so we're excellent. Hello. Yeah. Hold on a sec. Hey, Khan.
Tamarish.
Hi. It's like it's making me admit people. It's so strange because I said people can join without the host. But anyway, everyone's on. I feel like admit people is so strange. But okay.
I'm
We're
here.
almost at our record.
You can see me.
One more person and we're status quo.
Aryeh, what's going on? You're on mute. Oh, we can have a
I
speaker.
said, hey, Panina, how are you? Hey, everybody.
We're day 11 in quarantine.
Oh, you're quarantined?
No, we're not really quarantined.
Self-quarantine. Everyone is quarantined.
We're just responsible.
Gotcha.
Why can't I like let people allow participants?
I'm going to try to share the screen because I just had like one to share, but hopefully it'll work. Okay. Can you guys hear me? Is the sound coming through?
Yeah,
I hear. Yeah, perfect.
Okay, awesome. All right. We should start, right?
Let's give it a few more minutes because I
wait.
literally just sent out the reminder.
Oh, okay.
We have 40 minutes, so we should be okay.
Yeah, no, it's definitely not going to be too long. Oh, wow. Raul is on. Seen him in a while.
Leora's back.
Oh, real. Wow, we're intercontinental.
Seriously. Is there too much background noise, by the way, from my side?
I think
I don't hear any.
You're perfect.
What's up, Raul?
I think the volume and everything is great.
Okay, good.
Yeah, let's just give it a few more minutes. I just posted it on both events.
Well. How's everyone doing? New York City.
Seriously.
Real, oh my gosh, that's so fun. How's shutdown in London? Piccadilly Square.
I'm actually in Australia. I fled London. I got one of the
You're
last.
in Australia?
I literally got one of the last planes out.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
How is it in Australia?
It's crazy. I'm in quarantine. I can't leave my room.
Oh wow. You're in a hotel?
No, I mean my parents gave me. I've got an ensuite over here in the house, but I'm literally not allowed to leave the house or my room for the next 2 weeks.
Wow.
We have a minion, so that's good.
God.
Oh, that's okay. We had 10 guys. That'd be cool. We do Marav right after.
Yeah, well, I was just talking about the film.
We should totally do that. We should find 10 guys so we can do a minion after.
Sean, what's going on here? Sean, Sean.
You show.
Let's say like maybe 3 more minutes, like 4 minutes till 7:10.
Yeah, you show.
Well,
Okay, I can't turn the video.
Jakob Bloom. You can't turn the video.
Nina's there. Look. Nina, we've got to meet.
Can't hear you still, Jakob.
I said we have in the building.
Reminds me of that Maccabee video. I haven't really used Zoom all that much, but that's what it feels like.
Did everyone see Ellie Schwabel's new his video? I'll send it to the group. He actually is recovering from Corona, and he released an amazing video of him singing.
I don't know. It's not working. I can't get my video to work. Can anyone hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we could hear you.
Oh, hey, sorry. I'm ready. Everyone looks so sad. Guys, it's going to be okay. But we're going to hear words of Torah. It's going to be cool. Whoa, 14 participants. Yo.
Yo, it's better virtual. Holy.
I was just about to say, like, better online.
I think you know it's easier. You know, you're not traveling to go to a place, and it's also a good time now that we're all home. We're not, at work right now. On a regular work day, we'd all be traveling home. No,
That's true.
It's also cheaper. We don't have to feed anyone.
Also, because Aryeh is speaking, so it brings a big crowd.
Wow.
Seriously,
Yeah, that's very sweet.
for sure.
okay, guys, do you think we should start?
Yeah, I think that's probably a good idea.
15 people, world record for Westside Wednesday's virtual cheer.
Or in-person share.
Amazing. Okay, so welcome everyone, and I'm going to turn it over to Aryeh. I'm going to mute everyone except for Aryeh. Let's see how we do this. Allow. Okay, people can unmute, and then Aryeh. Okay. Thank you.
Hey everybody. It's lovely to see so many familiar faces. I haven't done this in like 2 years, so it's really good to see everybody. And Tamara, thanks a lot for organizing. This is really special, and hopefully you can continue doing it going forward. So I know that probably a lot of us are kind of dealing with this whole coronavirus in a variety of different ways. A lot of us know people that are suffering, have suffered, and obviously people that have passed away. There was just yesterday there's a bunch of websites that kind of talk about people specifically in the religious community. So if you guys aren't familiar with it, COL Live has updates about Crown Heights community and Buses Nias and Yeshiva World News. It gives updates. Unfortunately, our community has been hit particularly hard, and today was, I think, supposed to be a fast day. Is a fast day, but they told people in New York not to fast. So this is obviously a tremendously significant period in all of our lives. And I listened recently to something that Rabbi Sachs from England, from the UK, who I often used to quote a lot in the speeches that I gave, where he was interviewed on BBC talking about the coronavirus. And he said that in our lifetimes, and for most of us, this is going to be the most significant event of our entire lives, and something that we're going to remember more so than anything else. And he was comparing it to his experiences in World War II, rather his parents' experiences, and how much that impacted them, and how he couldn't imagine growing up why they were, they were always remembering it, and even if they didn't go through Nazi Germany, they were just the impact of World War II in general, particularly in the UK, and how significant it was. And he said he couldn't understand how his parents were able to remember every single detail of what had happened during their lives. And he says now he can understand because of how significant it is, and how it's so outside of the realm. It's almost like we were kind of just living a regular life, and then we've taken a pause essentially from what the world has been, and to what it is now, where we're completely in a alternative reality, in a different universe essentially, which is just crazy. And I know that we all experience that, and we all are grappling to come to terms with it in our own ways. And I'm sure everybody's kind of experienced it themselves when they're sitting in solitude and kind of trying to figure out what they're supposed to be taking from this, what the message is, how this is supposed to impact their lives, and what changes, if any, they should be making in their own lives. So my father shared something with me from a Rabbi Shmuel Zuber in Baltimore, who I actually don't know, haven't heard him before, but I'm going to start listening to his stuff because it was really very good and very on point and very inspirational. So I want to share his thoughts, and then I'm going to also share some of the things on our screen. Hopefully I'll be able to maneuver it, because this is I'm not very good with Zoom, unfortunately. So hopefully we can figure this out. So Rabbi Zuber was talking to his community, and he was talking about how he was trying to inspire them about all the different things that they should be doing during this period of time. And he was speaking to families mostly, because that's what his community is made of, families. And he was speaking to married couples, and he was talking to them about how obviously this is a time where you're supposed to be improving in your relationships, and a time that you're supposed to be improving on your interactions with your children. For most of us, that's not something that we are, lucky enough to have to deal with right now. And frankly, speaking to some of my sisters and hearing all the kids screaming in the background, I can't even imagine what that would be like. It sounds pretty crazy, but it's definitely, well, we as primarily single people, except Penina, I think, right? We have to figure out how, and even Penina, we have to figure out how we have to deal with our situation and what we can do during this time to improve ourselves, and how we can use this time to change our lives for the better. So he quoted a pasuk in last week's parasha. So it was Vayakal B'Kudei, right? And Vayakal B'Kudei is about the building of the Mishkan. It's about Moshe relaying to the Bnei Yisrael how they should build the Mishkan, giving them all the details, and then the Bnei Yisrael going forward and actually taking into action all the things that Moshe commanded them to do. And so it's just an interesting way that the sukkim are written out. And I'm going to share here, and let me know if you actually get this. So can you see, Tamar, do you want to just let me know?
That totally works. I can see
okay.
it. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So this is Parshas Vayakel. Parshas Vayakel starts off, Vayakel Moshe et kol adas b'nei Yisrael. Sorry, I'm going to switch back and forth between Ashkenazi and Sephardi pronunciation because I'm somewhere in between. Vayakel Moshe et kol adas b'nei Yisrael, vayomer aleim, illa hadvarim asher tziva Hashem la'asot osam. So Moshe told the Bnei Yisrael, these are the things that you should do. And he starts talking to them actually about Shabbat. And what's interesting, as this rabbi noted, last week, Shabbat was the first time that many people did not go to shul, weren't able to go to shul, right? Because all the shuls were closed down. And how sad it was that the first Shabbat that the Jews are commanded to keep Shabbos, that's the time that people were unfortunately unable to congregate together in their shuls and fully experience the Shabbos. And so anyway, Moshe gathers the Bnei Yisrael, Vayakel, he brings them all together. Kihila, that's the same shoresh. And he brings them all together and he starts telling them about how to build a Mishkan. And he gives them all these different rules. He tells them, how to make the breastplate, Avnei Shoam, and he tells them about the tabernacle itself, the tent, the coverings, etc., etc. And then fast forward unto the 20th pasuk over here. Vayetze kol hadas bnei Yisrael lifnei Moshe. So all the children leave from hearing Moshe's instructions. They leave. It doesn't exactly say what they do once they leave, but the next verse says, Vayavo kol ish asher neso libo. And then all the people whose hearts, whose spirits lifted or moved them towards donating towards the Mishkan, and that's the simple understanding of the pasuk. Everybody who was emotionally inspired to donate to the Mishkan, anybody whose spirit moved him, they brought these Trumat Hashem. They brought basically charity to the Mishkan to build the Mishkan. That's what this verse here, 21, is saying. So the Ramban has an interesting, and here's the Ramban. The Ramban on that verse has an interesting explanation of what happened here. Vayavo kol ish asher neso libo. So the Ramban says, Al hachachamim ha'osim malacha yomer kain. So this verse is actually referring not to people who gave charity in order to build the Mishkan, but it's actually referring to the people who were the artisans, the people like Bitzalel, the people that were actually knowledgeable enough in architecture and other areas of specialty to be able to build a Mishkan. And the Ramban further explains, Vitam asher neso libo, and he explains the words asher neso libo, whose hearts were lifted, l'karva ala malacha, to bring them close to do the work, ki lo haya bahem shalamadet hamalachot ha'ila memalamed. The Ramban makes an interesting note. The Mishkan was built less than a year after the Bnei Yisrael left Egypt. And the Bnei Yisrael in Egypt were not artisans. They weren't people who had the skills necessary to build anything. They were people who were bricklayers primarily. People who, you see all the pictures of the slaves gathering these massive large stones and pulling them. They weren't the ones who were specialists. They weren't trained in any of these particular areas. So the Ramban says that these were the people that asher nidva libo, asher neso libo, the people whose hearts uplifted them, and they didn't have anybody to teach them these works. O mishi yamin behen yadav klal. They didn't have anybody that had any expertise in these areas, any specialists who were able to teach them anything. Abo matzav b'tivo sheyada lasos kain. Asher neso libo, the Ramban explains, those whose hearts carried them essentially, they looked internally and they were able to realize that they had these gifts that they had in order to be able to build a Mishkan, all these special attributes. What's interesting is that the question is, where did these people recognize this inherent spirit that they had, this ability, this asher neso libo, that their hearts were lifted? How did they figure out that they had these characteristics and they were blessed with these special tools if they weren't somebody who actually had any ability or any experience when they were in Egypt? Nobody told them that they were artists. Nobody told them that they were architects. And specifically, we're talking about the building of the Mishkan, which was so significant to the Bnei Yisrael. I mean, this is the place where God rested, right? Where God commanded the Bnei Yisrael, I'm going to rest amongst you, and I'm going to do so inside the Mishkan. So obviously this was, for a new nation that was forming, the most significant and most important task. And in order to do so, they need to have people that were highly skilled. I mean, the details of the Mishkan are very, very intricate. There's, many Mesechtot in Mishnayos that are written just about all the various details and, intricate details that were required in order to create the Mishkan. So how did these people have it? What's the basis for them to be inspired internally to be able to experience that they had these skills? So what this Rabbi Zuber notes, and this is a really fascinating point and very much relevant to the experiences that we have now. The verse, and I flagged this for you before, Vayetze kol hadas bnei Yisrael lifnei Moshe. It says, after Moshe commanded everybody how to build a Mishkan, everybody left from in front of Moshe. And then the next pasuk, they came back and people were inspired. Certain people recognized that they had the skills and they were inspired to be able to come back and build a Mishkan. So he really emphasizes this pasuk because it really is not necessary for the Torah to tell us that they left and then they came back. There's nothing in between. It doesn't say they left and they kind of learned what to do and then they came back. It just says they left and then they came back. So what Rabbi Zuber was noting, really interesting point, and not something I've ever noticed before, is that in order for people to sometimes recognize their skills and recognize their abilities, they have to take themselves outside of where they generally are. They have to isolate themselves. They have to remove themselves. So we, as Jewish people, as people that are part of a community, part of a group, right? That's first and fundamental to us. We kind of our year, our holidays are what kind of determine our year. We count things between, okay, now it's the season of, Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, then it's the season of Sukkot, then, we're looking forward to Purim or Hanukkah, Purim, Pesach. We are a nation that's really kind of rooted very much in our communal events. Everything that we do, and particularly Pesach coming up, right? It's going to be a really difficult Pesach because we're always used to celebrating it together with our families and together with community. Our entire nation and our entire religion is tremendously based on inner relationships between people. And it's a very difficult time, particularly for those of us that we either have some family around, but even so, it's not necessarily our own immediate family. And it's a very, very isolating time. However, the point that Rabbi Zuber was making is that when we isolate into ourselves, it's necessary to do so, because if we don't do that, we don't have the inspiration, we don't have the opportunity to realize things about ourselves that we wouldn't have otherwise realized. And so particularly in the case of the Mishkan, what he was pointing out here is these people were slaves. They didn't have any skills relevant to the building of the Mishkan. But in order for them to recognize that they had those abilities, right? So Moshe was telling them, imagine he gathers together an entire group of slaves, hundreds of thousands of people. None of them have ever engaged in any very specific and specialized tasks. And he tells them, okay, I want you to do this like really crazy idea and build this Mishkan in all this specific detail with all these different types of materials that nobody's ever heard of. And everybody's looking at him like, where do you want us to get this, get this knowledge from? How are we ever going to figure this out? None of us know what we're doing. And they all go home, perhaps dejected, perhaps kind of looking into themselves and asking, how are we going to be able to get to where we need to be? And it's in those moments where you are isolated, where you are on your own, particularly now, right? Many of us, we're sitting at home and we're kind of dwelling within ourselves. And you realize like it happens almost automatically. Like the first day or two, it's really hard, 3 days in, and then suddenly you start to feel some sort of inspiration. Things start to make sense, and you start to kind of dwell within yourselves and you say, all right, it's not that bad. I mean, I'm talking to all of us, and I know that I'm sure a lot of us have gone through a lot of really difficult processes in order to get here. And I'm sure if I would have asked you a few weeks ago, can you imagine isolating yourself in your apartment for even a day or two, you would have thought it's nuts. There's just no way we can do it. It's not something that I have within myself. And then you do it, and at least my experience has been that eventually it starts to feel normal. And maybe that's not great, but there is something special about that, right? Nobody ever wants to go on vacation by themselves. Everybody's always so afraid. And then you do it, and then you spend a couple of days, and suddenly you realize, okay, I can do this. This is something that I have the ability to do. And then suddenly you start to think and realize things about yourself, right? Everybody says when you go on your own and you travel on your own and you spend a lot of time on your own, you can't escape yourself, right? You can't escape from what we typically do, which is to find other people, to find other distractions, to find things to do. There's only so much Netflix you can watch, right? Like you're sitting at home after a certain period of time, you have to confront yourself. And when you confront yourself, you start to learn things about yourself that you didn't realize you had. You start to recognize that there's a lot of talents that you have, a lot of, abilities that you have that maybe have been wasted, maybe haven't been focused on. A lot of people might be, considering switching careers or considering kind of taking new paths and finding new meanings. And that's really what the Torah is telling us. I mean, looking back at the pasuk by Vayetze, and I'm having a hard time getting back to the pasuk, but by Vayetze, it's integral that the Torah tells us that they left after, right? The concept of Vayetze means to leave from the group. There was a Vayakel, there was a group that was brought together, and then there's a Vayetze. You have to leave the group. Sometimes it's necessary to leave the group in order for you to be able to figure out what it is that is important to you and the abilities and the strengths that you had that you wouldn't have otherwise seen because you'd been so distracted by all the things that were going on around you by all the distractions that we constantly put in front of ourselves so that we can escape ourselves. And when it's vayetze, when you leave the kahal, when you go away, hopefully not for too long of a period, right? But you go away and you kind of look into yourself and you learn all these new things and all these abilities that you have. And then your heart's uplifted. That's what the next pasuk says. Vayavo kol ish asher niso libo. Everybody whose heart was uplifted because they were able to kind of isolate themselves and recognize the strength that they had within themselves and come back and help the group, right? That's what happens. You leave the group, vayetze, and then vayavo, you come back into the group and you're able to help the community because ultimately we are a community. That is what we are. And you're able to figure out what strengths you have internally that you didn't realize before and come back and help the rest of the Jewish people and the rest of society at large do better and strengthen themselves. So that's the Dvar Torah I want to share, but there's this, I did want to raise some points that I saw Rabbi Sachs noted in his interview, because there's some very significant, I mean, he's one of the most brilliant thinkers, I think, who's constantly thinking about these things. And it's interesting to note, like, what people that think about morals and philosophy all the time, what are they thinking about the coronavirus and how it's impacting us, and what's the meaning here? What are we supposed to be taking from this, right? I mean, on the one hand, you can just say, okay, this is just a random act. It's just kind of just happened, and society is trying to figure out how to get past this and get back onto our feet. But, you know, it's, I mean, we're raised to think that there's something more going on, and we've been trained to think that there's something significant we're supposed to be taking out from daily events. It's not just random meaninglessness, right? Otherwise, what's the point of being alive? So Rabbi Sachs, in general, he has a big focus on the dichotomy between the I and the we. And he talks about how society has kind of gone from one extreme to another. And even within society as it currently exists, you have different populations and different governments that focus the we. For example, in China, it's much more of a, and frankly, as he points out, sometimes, like in the time of crisis, having a more of a focus on the we, right, to the exclusion of the I, which is problematic in a regular functioning society, but in a time of crisis can sometimes be helpful. And you see that in a lot of the countries where they were successfully able to stop things, where literally everybody, and China talked about in the beginning, how they just sacrificed everything. Everybody felt this incredible need to sacrifice for the community, and they just shut everything down and they had no problem with it. And then there's the I all the way on the other side of the extreme, where, you know, unfortunately you see some people who don't really recognize that they're supposed to be considerate for the greater good of society. And so Rabbi Sachs talks about how there's this pendulum that, you know, and we are, in fact, and thankfully we've realized that inherent in all of us, even though we are very much an I society, right? And everything's about our own material comforts and the things that we can get and benefit. Many people, right, who don't necessarily have to worry about their own health are staying inside because they're concerned for the rest of society, for older people, for people that are at risk or at more risk. And that's very inspirational. And he was talking about how you see, even in a society that's so completely I-oriented, the fact that we've kind of shifted, at least on the edges, to recognizing we, he says, very inspirational and very, very good for society in general. But he also noted, and these are things that kind of I've seen myself, right? Many of us kind of go through life and we think about our family. We do reach out to them on occasion, but I feel personally that I've been reaching out to people. I mean, certainly you have more time when you're cooped up at home, but I've reached out so much more to my family during this time, both because I want to make sure they're okay, but just because, you know, you start to think about what's really important in life. And thankfully we have the technological tools, which frankly people, you know, and Rabbi Sachs notes himself, he's always been very much anti a lot of social media because it does distract us from things, and it's it's a way of kind of increasing divisiveness often, right? Things like Twitter, where you just have people that are such, people have become so polarized. But during this period of time, during the coronavirus, you really do see a lot of people using these tools to come together, to join together as a community, and that's a very nice aspect of this. And the other thing he points out is that we as a society, right, we always talk about how would we have existed, 50, 100 years ago during World War II? How would we have been able to survive with all the craziness that went on then, right? We're just like kind of a snowflake generation, and we don't have the tools, we don't have the ability to succeed under these stressful times. But looking around, and it's, I guess he points out, he says, look, it could be a lot worse, right? I mean, it's obviously a very terrible time that we're going through, but at least we're united together as a society. We're united as a society against a general, I call it evil, or a general problem, as opposed to, people are dying, but in a way we're kind of getting together to address that issue in society. People are trying to create vaccines. People are trying to do good things, as opposed to, war, where people are losing their lives because they're fighting against other people, which is, a horrible thing. And then finally, the concept of sacrifice, and Talia, who's on this thing, although I can't see her face right now, but pointed this out to me, right? This week's parsha is Vayikra, and Vayikra is all about sacrifices. And we as a society, again, we're sacrificing a lot of ourselves for the greater good of society. And the question is, Vayikra talks all about different sacrifices. Why is it necessary to have so many different types of sacrifices? Why do we need the Ola and the Shlamim and the Ola V'Yored and all these different types of karbanos? And the answer is everybody sacrifices differently. Everybody's unique. And my sacrifice is not the same as somebody else's sacrifice. And we each have our own abilities to sacrifice. And we each are required, according to our own capabilities and our responsibilities, to sacrifice. You have the healthcare workers who are literally putting their lives on the line every day, right? That's a huge sacrifice. Our kind of tiny sacrifice of sitting at home and trying not to get others sick. But everybody's sacrificing in different ways. And that's what the Torah is trying to teach us with all these different types of sacrifices, to explain that, it's unique. Everybody sacrifices in their own way. And I think, there's a lot of inspiring things, despite the fact that this is a very difficult time and everybody's stressing out and everybody's dealing with all the pain and struggle in their own way. We should look to the bright side of it and to the inspiring things that come out, and recognize that there are people that are literally giving their lives for others and putting themselves on the line. And we should take inspiration from that. And I hope that, this will hopefully come to an end in the near future, and that people will stop dying, and that, as a society, we will continue to exist, and we'll come out much stronger from this. I mean, that's the question. Is this going to really change us, or are we going to fall back literally 2 weeks outside of this? Are we going to just fall back into our routines and be like, oh yeah, there was this time that we remember and kind of vague in our memories? Or are we going to take this time and as a society, I mean, this is the only time that I can recall that the entire world is connected in one goal to stop this virus. I mean, can you imagine? There's no other thing that I can imagine in my lifetime that I've ever seen anything like this. So as much as we are so divided and so different, the fact that we can be alive at a time where the entire world is suffering and from the same thing, and all kind of gathering together to work towards a resolution, is pretty beautiful. So that's what I have to say. I hope everybody continues to be okay and their families are healthy and well. And I give everybody a bracha that we should get out of this quickly, and that everybody should remain healthy.
Thank you, Aryeh. Panina, gonna throw it to you for the refuah shlema.
Amen, amen. Thank you, Aryeh. So we just wanted to just mention a few names for refuah shlema, along with everyone else that we're not aware of. Shimon ben Dada, Gimpel Mordechai Daniel ben Sarah Ita, Rabbi Shalom Dovner ben Rachel Bela, Avraham Chai ben Sarah Shendel, and Avraham Yitzchak ben Chana. And I'm sure you also know Eli Bir from Hatzalah, Eliezer Yehuda ben Chaya, and just anyone else. We're also wishing everyone a quick recovery and that we should all stay safe. Thank you, Aryeh.
Thank you.
I can unmute everyone.
Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Thank you guys. Everyone. We'll be in touch about next week.
Yalla.
Thank you.
Good luck, everyone.
Very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Leora.
Leora, I don't see you.
Oh, also we wanted to give a shout out to Leora, who is constantly pushing to make West Side Wednesdays happen. in person, but always.
Leoras. We have 2 Leoras.
I'm under JB Neiman because I'm under my husband's computer. Zoom's been messed up. But guys, this was so wonderful. I hope everyone took something meaning from what Aryeh said. It was so wonderful. And I feel very inspired. And it was something really nice to hear through a really hard time.
Yeah, it's so nice to hear Torah.
We have 3 minutes and 50 seconds till Zoom 40 minutes is over.
No, let's do a countdown.
We will.
How many minutes are in 3 minutes? How
10 seconds.
many seconds? That's funny.
No, but it's
crazy.
really, is it gonna
Liora, how are you guys doing over there?
Leora, why no video?
My Zoom has been broken all day. I think I need to call them. I don't know why.
I can like request that you.
And Aframian, how you doing in LA?
Oh,
Hey, we're doing okay. Staying indoors, trying to stay safe. But this really brings like a little sparkle to my week. Thank you guys so much for setting it up. It's such a great idea. You guys did such a good job.
Tamar.
Really good also.
Yeah, Benina.
All Tamar. Wait, Liora, is your whole family home?
Most of us, yeah. Some of them are like out of the house, but most of us are here.
How is it in LA? Is it hectic? Is it like everyone's taking it seriously?
Yeah, all businesses are closed and it's just like grocery stores and like essential like visits. That's all we have. Everyone's like trying to be like, I went to the grocery store yesterday and most people wearing masks and gloves and everyone's taking it pretty seriously.
Yeah. So sad. So crazy. Like my cousin actually from Antwerp is in New York. She has nowhere to do Seder. She's all alone. And I'm like, do you want to come to Lakewood? And like, she's not so excited about but it's like, she's literally all alone for Pesach. Because like, you know, people also don't want to take someone and they don't know if they've been somewhere or whatever. It's really crazy.
Shame, so sad.
I know a lot of people who are for Seder who are staying, including myself, who have family in the area or nearby, but are still staying in the city just because getting there is, even if you're good till Erev Pesach, getting there, you might, unless you're driving personally, getting there, taking the subway, taking Long Island Railroad, taking whatever, depending on where you're going, getting there could expose you. So like they're playing it by ear just to wait till the last minute to see, you know, if it's better then great. But if it's not, why take the risk of taking whatever I catch on the subway to my family?
Yeah, no subways. Okay, less than a minute. It's gonna close. Okay, guys, thanks for being on the shear, Westside Wednesday, the virtual shear, and we'll send info for next week. Take care. Stay home. Bye, guys.
Tomorrow you can't get rid of me. I'm staying till the end.
Oh, I'm ending the meeting, Leora. I love I'm calling you Leora. But you know, I'm ending the meeting. I have all the power. Then again, it's gonna end by itself.
It will.
I don't think it does.
End by itself.
It does. I think it does.
Does it?
It does. I've been on Zoom meetings and just suddenly it's over.
They have to do a countdown. They should do like.
So it tells me less than a minute. No, it didn't. Well, it told me that, and then now it has less than a minute upgrade.
Oh, it says.
So it's just gonna end. It's gonna suddenly end.
So I've been in a few calls and it never ended. So I was like, oh, it's like a scam to get money.
Oh, sometimes they'll extend it. They'll give it to you like for free.
I was on a Brit Milah and they're like, and I was on a Zoom Brit Milah, and it
Did you do Chazan Zevi? No.
No.